Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Good morning, Legacy viewers. It's 8th of February today, the 46th anniversary of an operation at Mamuandi. And today we've got a bit of a group discussion. We've got Martin Venter, who took part in the operation, who's going to give us his recollections. And we've got a few guys that would then ask questions. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone, particularly Martin. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, guys, as I said before, I think Mamuandi is a very interesting place in the history of 32 Battalion. I went and I looked, and we've actually lost, 32 Battalion has lost 12 guys at Mamuandi killed in action. The first incident was in 1976, the 15th of May 1976, when we lost 2 guys. One was killed and one went missing in action. The second occurrence was on the 18th of April 1977. And I always say that is, in fact, important for me because that's why our 3 AWOLers were actually sent to 32 Battalion. Farnes Kriel went to his platoon to Mamuandi. He ran into an ambush. He was the only white leader group with his platoon. He was shot in the throat. He couldn't speak on the radio. He couldn't get help. He was dragged to a cut line. There he laid for about, I think, 3 to 4 days, as I recall what he's told me, when he actually radioed in to get help. And they sent there was a chopper from Mamuandi, organized there was a chopper. I'm talking under correction, but I think it was Commandant Jan Martins or Milkman that was still at Mamuandi at that stage. So they went to rescue Farnes and sent somebody to relieve him to get to take control of his platoon. Interesting stuff is Mamuandi has also a link to Eheke. After the contact of Eheke, when we regrouped with the Rekis. By the way, I was at the Eheke as well. That was my first operation with 32 Battalion. As we regrouped, the Rekis showed Big Daddy the machine gun, and he immediately recognized the number. And that was the machine gun that was taken for Farnes to Eheke, as it was a corporal for net from the Rekis. I think it was from 5 Reki that found the machine gun. He later also received Norris Crooks for one of them was from contact later. Unfortunately, he was killed in action. Now, being said that, I believe that's the reason why our 3 AWOLers, when we came from Rhodesia, were sent to 32 Battalion, because there was a lack to have more than one white leader group per platoon, in the case if a platoon leader gets shot. So that's why we were created. I think the word all the NCOs hated, sidekicks. We were sidekicks of the platoon commanders. That's where the word comes from. Now, obviously, if we look at the 8th of February 1978, that is the day on which 5 platoons cross over to Mamuandi, and we ran into a major contact there, and we lost 4 people that was killed in Mamuandi. I think the last time I was there is after Ops Reindeer, when the 4.55 cannons has dropped short. That was also part of that operation, but at that stage it was empty. But it was a very strange feeling for me going back there to Mamuandi. So I think that's the history of Mamuandi, how it fits in, and what has happened at Mamuandi over those 3 years that I know of. I managed to work with Farnes. As I said, I was Farnes' sidekick at Mamuandi. And funny enough, Farnes was shot the second time at Mamuandi on the 8th of February. So that's just strange how things happen. I think he's the only guy that I'm aware of that was shot at the same place twice. Any questions?
Martin, tell me, as a matter of interest, in those days, what did the Mashilas look like?
We had everything what you can think of at Mashila's. I can remember I still got a aluminium H frame that I used to wear that was camouflage. It is still here at my house. The main thing is, but I must also tell you, I think the contract ran about for 5 minutes. Then I realized I still had my Mashila on my back. That's how everything just happened. And the flipping adrenaline was flowing, and we were all shouting and screaming and wasn't going about.
And the weapons?
Weapons, FNs, AK-47s, that's what we had going across the border. We had very few LMGs. We had to beg, borrow, and steal whatever you could lay your hands on in those years.
Right. Type of boots?
Type of boots, mainly South African. At some stage, when we do clandestine ops, you would take your boots to the flipping that fixed angle grinders and change the soles at the bottom, so it's not recognized as South African soles. That's what we've also done. I think the fancy boots only came much later.
I was there 80 to 80, end of 83. So what were the rat packs looking like?
I think at some stage we had the normal South African rat packs. Then we got the so-called color-coded rat packs. The colors on the was tins. I think red was meat, orange was sausages. It had no labels. The matchboxes had no labels. That was the sort of clandestine ops. Then later, somebody, obviously in Pretoria, that wasn't developed that food stuff. They had this nice rat packs with all sorts of energy drinks and everything. The problem is it doesn't work because if you haven't got water, you just stuff. So I think that's the main thing, that the guys that wasn't developed the rat packs didn't know exactly what conditions we were in. So with those rat packs, we know normally when we made caches for every week, we took a lot of big tins with us that we could put in some cash and later.
Talking about energy drinks and water, you carry some dop with you?
Not really. No, not really. I had at one stage I carried some sherry in the winter, but that was really, I mean, it's just impractical. You can rather flip and carry water with you, because I mean that was our big issue. Okay, what else is there? Do you guys want to start from the beginning with Mamuandi?
Yeah, can you tell? Matt, I got one more question. Can you tell us how Big Daddy got his Norris? Did he not get the Norris crooks there?
Yes, he got the Norris crooks for keeping some troops together and for taking the leader role, because remember, he was in charge. It was his operation. He was in charge, and he also got wounded at one stage. I know somebody said over the radio, I think it was Steve that was on the below star, that Big Daddy was shot in the head, and it came through that Big Daddy was shot dead. And I think that's also one of the misperceptions. But I mean, he had a bullet or a shrapnel wound in his head that was bleeding. Johan Low, he was bleeding. I know Tony Vieira, the guy that later went to the Reckies, he was Sergeant Major at that stage. He looked at Johan and he looked at Big Daddy, and then he was taking his head all over and look if there was blood. I mean, as I said, Finest got shot there the second time at Mamuandi.
Did you say Big Daddy did get shot in the head?
While he had a shrapnel wound in the head, where it was a bullet passing, or I mean, that unit. It's the same with Farnes Kriel. I cannot really say that Farnes was shot. I think it was more a shrapnel that penetrated him. That's what happened to Farnes again.
So for us guys that came later, now we know why he was like he was.
No, he was like that before that, man. Big Daddy has always been Big Daddy.
Okay, Kevin, yeah, I think
Let
maybe
me
if you just start from the beginning, just a quick welcome to Rousseau Swart, who's also joined us. Maybe just yeah, start from the beginning, give us the story, and then guys can ask questions afterwards. I think that might be the easiest.
Okay. So what happened? We were preparing for the big operation. I think around the 26th of January 1978. We were traveling in a convoy late at night because we had to regroup south of the border. The plan was, I think there were 6 platooners involved. 5 would go across with Big Daddy, and the other platoon will stay behind to look at the 81 mortars that were there. The 5 platoons were Steve Barnard and Corey du Plessis, and then they were the platoons that moved onto the one edge to the southern side, and us were in the 3 platoons. As we hit Mamuandi, on the left was Johan Low, or was Loki. Big Daddy was moving with his platoon. In the middle was myself with Farnes Kriel, and on the left was Don Adelaray. So as the 5 platoons approach and get closer to Mamuandi, Johan Low actually captured a guy that was neatly addressed, and we still believe it was one of the SWAPOs, who told us we must not move straight into Mamuandi, but move from the side, which we basically just ignored. Then Corey du Plessis and Steve Barnard's platoon split off, and they started moving to the side, and we were waiting for them to get in position. But we actually waited too long. They moved into a flippin' ambush on the southern side of Mamuandi. What I think happened is SWAPO has wrecked us on the previous Shanas that we went around, and they saw our operation, the way we operated. And they know that 2 platoons will move first and the other 3 last. So they set up an ambush. So Steve Barnard and Corey moved into ambush. They hit the ambush. The moment they hit the ambush, SWAPO started firing from Mamuandi over our heads with 82 mortars, trying to bring it down. So the moment the ambush was still going on, and we were moving in a straight extended line towards Mamuandi, what then happened is SWAPO withdrew from the ambush position, went into the Mamuandi base, and we hit the Mamuandi base straight up front, and it was just one hell of a firefight as we went into Mamuandi. I think there, if I can remember, sorry guys. So we then hit it, and I mean, it was just a hell of a firefight. It was getting late. I have subsequently heard that there was 2 choppers that came in during the night. During that afternoon when we moved south. Gordon Roberts and Mike Pierce has jumped into the choppers. They took out without authorization. They were told to return back. And then Gordon Roberts just responded negative, that he was not returning back. It was late the afternoon when the two gunships approached Mamuandi. I think Steve Barnard threw a smoke grenade, and they told the choppers to fire east of us, of them, because they were the two platoons on the south. What then happened is, as soon as they started firing, they were firing at our own troops. And I know Corrie du Plessis just shouted, go away, you are shouting at own forces. Then the guys in the choppers realized it was dangerous, because what was also happening as they started firing, SWAPOl was firing RPGs and others at the choppers. Luckily, they came in with us from behind, so SWAPOl couldn't see them clearly. So obviously, then there was choppers had to pull back, and they left us. So after the contact, then Johan Louw asked me was Farnes, because it was chaos, and then Farnes was lying in front. It was troops told us. Myself and Johan Louw, or Louwtjie, went and fetched Farnes. He was shot in the throat, and then obviously we moved back. We were sort of encircled by SWAPOl, 3 platoons north of the base, and the other 2 platoons on the southwestern side. That's where and we had to lay there and stay there for the night. During the night, we could hear vehicle movement. We were getting worried and prepared, but by the next morning they withdrew from Mamuandi. Myself and Johan Louw was taking up the rear. We had to check that nobody was left behind. And as we moved through the end part of Mamuandi, I actually saw 2 bodies that they taken shirts and boots off and just dropped the trenches from the side onto the 2 guys, leaving them there that got killed. I didn't see any other persons. Johan Louw picked up a 82 mortar, a base plate that he took with him, and then we had to withdraw. Now, so obviously the other thing was there was some story or uneasiness that the so-called parabats came to us rescue us. Yes, there was parabats on standby that night if something should happen to be dropped, but we moved to the south ourselves when the choppers came in. They dropped some parabats that actually just walked out with us from Mamuandi back to the cut line and take the wounded. But I mean, that's in short what happened in Mamuandi. It was just a big bash up. As you said, Big Daddy got his honoris crux for keeping the troops together and being in charge of the whole attack at Mamuandi.
Martin?
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, Martin, just a quick one for the benefit of our viewers. Big Daddy, who was he and why was he called Big Daddy? Or can't you tell?
Big Daddy, I can tell. Big Daddy was actually his radio name. So we all had call signs in the bush. Mine was King Kong. Big Daddy's radio name was Big Daddy. He was also referred to as Echo Victor. His initials, Eddie Viljoen. He was second in charge at our time of 3-2 Battalion. He used to do operations on. The other famous name he had was Major Fanigalo, because he came from the mines and he could speak Fanigalo. So there's quite an interesting thing about Big Daddy and the name Fanigalo. What I can remember is at one stage, one of the platoon commanders had problem with his troops, and Big Daddy was visiting Buffalo, and he got the troops together, asked them if there's somebody that can translate, and unfortunately for a guy, he said he can understand Fanigalo, and he will start was translating, and Big Daddy went, and the translator went, and obviously knowing Big Daddy wasn't satisfied, grabbed the guy at the collar, throw him on the flipping ground, jumped on him twice, picked him up and told him to flipping translate. They say as Big Daddy was talking, this translator was about two sentences in advance already talking to the troops. So that's the story about the funny Galo and Big Daddy.
Okay, has anyone else got anything they'd like clarified or any questions they'd like to ask?
I mean, there's a lot of strange things that happen. If you know it, in Louis' book, Buffalo Battalion. I mean, one of the things is I got a troop. We actually had an 82 rocket launcher, the 82 old folding rocket launcher that we used to use because there wasn't enough RPGs available. So we took this 82 rocket launcher. And I had a little corporal and a certain guy called, I think, Domingos Castro that used to shoot this thing, and the corporal was loading it. And as they load the second one, the guy got shot right in the head. We take him that evening, left him for a dead, and the next morning we realized this guy was still alive. We then injected him Sargigon, gave him a drip. I think he got to the choppers at about 11 or 12 o'clock the next morning. He was flew out. The guy survived. He lost the sort of usage of his left arm, but the oak was okay. He's made it. I mean, it's the same with Farners. He was lying that night very badly wounded, and the next morning, the first thing I saw, he was sitting smoking a cigarette. Then I know Farners is going to be okay. The other thing is the guy that I shared was a trench that night was Patron. Patron was the guy that was killed in May when the 5.5s has dropped short at Shana Golf. I mean, there we lost two guys during the shortfall, and Kobus died of his wounds a month later in hospital. So he was also one of the guys that was at Mamuandi that we've unfortunately have lost.
Tell me, Martin, back then in 78, were you in the bush walking in the same formation as us in the 80s, box formation?
Box formation, and we used to only walk around in 3 single files when it was very dense and you cannot move around. But yes, we moved in a box formation, whether we were one platoon or going into large operations. We would normally, like for example, Mamuandi, we moved in 3 single files. When we get close that we realized they might be a SWAPOl base, we would set up a single line and just move forward in a single line until we there was shit, it's the fan, as they say.
Just to give you a little story there about the box formation, it's actually quite weird because in the late 70s and 80s, at infantry school, they teach you all these weird formations. And when I did the coin ops course at Maleeskop with the police,
yes,
they teach you all these weird positions. But yet, when you go into the fighting units like 3-2 or the fighting units of the coin ops, they tell you straight away, forget about all that training, get into a box and then, hit the front line.
Yeah, I think that's the same experience. I mean, I'm now actually busy writing my whole story up for myself from doing basics in Tiffys, going to 3-Psi, AWOL to the RLI, locked up with the flippin' Cubans in the Pretoria DB, and then went to 3-2 Battalion. I mean, it's the same thing in South Africa. There was lots of fuffing around and things in our military, which I've never experienced in 3-2 or in the RLI because the guys were busy fighting a war. They haven't had time to fuff around.
And the white foreigners, you used to call them also then Philistines?
Which foreigners?
Like the ones from the UK maybe, or
No,
America.
not really. I think the biggest experience was in fact against our Afrikaans boertjies in the RLI, because every time they said who's gonna carry the machine gun, give it to the Dutchman. I mean, that was the normal reply. That's something interesting I was writing yesterday. I'm up to about 40 pages now on my story, and I shouldn't say that out loud, but I think I had, when I arrived, I worked with Rooks Griesel. Then I worked with Farnes. He got shot. Then I worked with Oppies. Then we split, and then I was working with Sarel Creer, and then Oppies got shot with Andre Retief. And then later, I mean, Sarel also got killed at the Rekkie. So I haven't got a good succession rate of platoon leaders. I don't know why, but if they were just unlucky or I put a curse on them, but that's unfortunately what happened.
Would it be fair to say that, Kevin, just responding to your thing of infantry school and the training and the formations, etc., was it not very much the guys doing the training only had theory and weren't actually necessarily involved in actual contacts and things like that? And they were training you from the book, but they hadn't actually experienced the real thing themselves. I'm asking. I mean, certainly at one time, most of the guys that trained us, corporals, lieutenants, were second years while we were first years, and I don't think any of them had been to the border.
I tell you, my thinking is the following. At Milieuskop, there the instructors were very experienced, all ex-Rhodesian and all of that. So then they knew how it all works. I just think it was maybe the doctrine that came from Pretoria for coin ops in the police. At infantry school, I think it was like trying to mix a bit of semi-conventional and coin ops. So maybe that got it all a bit confused.
Okay, guys, I was never at infantry school. No, I mean, I was an AWOL flipping troop, to remember. But I've experienced it in two ways. I mean, we actually signed on short service and then was sent to 3SIA to be trained in Potch as so-called section leaders for 3-1 and 3-2 battalion. I don't know where they coined that, but that was actually totally wrong, because that's not what you were going to do at 3-1 and 3-2 battalion. But first thing is, we had a PF called Serfontein, a full corporal, that was our so-called instructor. First thing, I've had no respect for this guy because he didn't know what he's doing. Second thing, I think after about 4 months that we were in 3-2, he arrived there with a big fanfare, being a sergeant. He was RTU'd within 2 weeks and sent back. I mean, that was the guy that was supposed to train us to go to 3-1 and 3-2 battalion. Other experience in there was RLI. Those instructors were guys that were in the field. They know what was going on. They could tell you this is what the books say, but this has happened to us. Be careful about that. And that's where I think it was a hell of a lot more practical for me in the RLI, because the guys were fighting a war. I still believe our problem is the South African Army had too many troops, not knowing what to do with all of them. I think that was our problem from my perspective.
We've had a few others join us, but if anyone else has got questions, guys, please that's the whole idea here, is to find out more, and the best way to do that is to ask Martin some questions.
So radios, Martin, what type of radios did you have?
Standard old South African
Okay.
B-52s in the north. I mean, stock standard. I mean, normally communications was a nightmare. Okay, I can share something else with you now that you've mentioned radios. After there was contact at Mamuandi, when we regrouped, obviously Farnes was lying and I was trying to see who of my platoon is left and everything. My radio operator appeared without radio, without encoding, decoding cards, because everything was in the radio. So my radio was missing. The guy probably dropped it during the contact, and the radio was missing. So I just said to this guy, listen, you better find this radio. And the guy disappeared, and we couldn't find him. He was missing. And I think about a week later, he appeared at Ilundu with a radio on his back. So he went, looked for the radio, hide in the bush, returned the flippant radio. He came back to Ilundu after he's recovered the radio. I think that story is also in Louis' book. I mean, it's things that has happened that nobody can tell you.
Can you
The
remember
other
what
thing,
was the name? What was the name again that we used for the coding?
oh, I can't even remember. I mean, that's more than 40 years back, man. Yes, I can't even. I know that there was that card code that we used at that stage, but I can never recall it.
Does the word Slidex ring a bell?
Yeah, I think Slidex, yeah.
A riddle?
Obviously, it's like a riddle that you follow. Obviously, I still got here my operational card that I managed to, don't know if I hide it something, it's against my wall. It's been framed here in the house. So I got that. What else is
I know
there?
when the Pumas used to fly in, the Giants, some pull-out coding. Or
Yeah.
they say 3232 throw smoke.
Yeah, no, that was.
And then we used to say back to the Giants, you have be on board.
Yeah, you've got yellow, you got green. I know they got a hell of a anxious when you haven't got, and you throw a flipping red. Then you had to explain to them, listen, I'm throwing a red, but it's okay, you can come in. I haven't got anything else.
Martin,
Yes, sir.
Steve and Corey, were they totally pinned down when they got that ambush so that they couldn't rejoin the fight on the eastern side?
No, they were pinned down during the contact. What Cliff Wilkinson was with Corey, Cliff Wilkinson is the other AWOLer that used to AWOL with me. So I've talked to Cliff. He was part of that side. First thing is they came under heavy fire. And then Cliff told me there were 3 guys killed on that side. He believed that there was a sniper sitting in a tree that took out the 3 guys within a certain line of fire. Yes, but after the so-called contact, I think SWAPOl moved back. But the thing is, SWAPOl were everywhere between us. The fact is, it was getting dark. The Oaks didn't want to move at night, so we decided to stay in 2 groups because SWAPOl was right between us. Was Mamuandi was base. The other interesting fact is that with Johan's Louw's group, Captain Boetes was also with him, but he was on the right-hand side close to the Shana, and he took a shrapnel in his mouth, taking out 2 of his teeth. So I can just recall, he said to Big Daddy, if this is the way SWAPOl pull teeth, he doesn't know how they do any other operations. So, I mean, there's also the funny stuff always, in situations like that happened in the bush. I think the big thing is, I mean, we lost 6 guys, and I think, and I'm talking under correction, I think we had about 21 or 22 wounded. There was a lot of guys wounded at Mamuandi because they were in Mamuandi, dug in trenches, and we were coming on the open, and we could never get into Mamuandi, or at least not that night before they actually withdrew the next morning. The other interesting thing is there is some recordings that Botis has done with SWAPO commanders, and they have said that they haven't lost any men at Mamuandi because it's bullshit. And something that I'm not looking at is this whole thing about what happened after Eheke. There was some communication that went out. The bullshit of SWAPO at Mamuandi. The bullshit at Kasinga that they are coming. I mean, there's so many people that has come up with things that to say that, you know, how could we ever have allowed SWAPO, and there was some communists, to come up with this negative propaganda? I mean, let me give you an example. In Jans Breitenbach's book, Strike, he mentioned a certain SWAPO was Mkade that was in Kasinga at the moment of the attack, who has written a book. You cannot find that book anywhere in South Africa. I managed to get a copy from it from overseas that I brought across. The book is called Waiting in the Wings of this ANC cadre, and he confirms that Kasinga was a base, that there was Cubans and everything. I mean, and it's the same, that this sort of facts that we just, it's all there and nobody is talking about it. We never came out. And I think this is my biggest concern about this whole border war, is the sort of information that was sent back to South Africa, or even distributed to the local population, not knowing what was going on. I've got this book. This guy's made a summary of all the major incidents that happened across the border from 1959, 1960. Now, for example, when I talked about Mamuandi, he's written on the 18th of April 1977, during Operation Backshaw in southern Angola near Mamuandi, 12 members of 3-2 Battalion were wounded and another 4 went missing when ambushed by plan. I mean, that is the finest incident that he has recorded. I picked up May 1976. This is when the 2 guys were killed at Mamuandi. It was confirmed in Boti's book by no, I can't get it, but it was confirmed. It says in 1976, May 1976, in Namibia, Bravo Group, the future 3-2 Battalion, was responsible for SADF's external fighting, beginning Operation Cobra, in which 3 companies attacked SWAPO bases north of Beacon 28 in Angola, inflicting heavy casualties. So there's very interesting stuff in this book. One of the more famous ones is the one on Eheke, and it reads as following. 27 to 20 October 1977, about 80 planned insurgents crossed the cut line into Namibia and encountered SADF security forces, leading in a 3-day battle that began south of the border and ended in Angola when SADF members came under fire from 2 planned bases. According to the casualty list, plan lost 6 men, while 6 members of SADF, 1 recce's died and 9 were wounded. 2 planned bases were destroyed and the 3rd was badly damaged. This was the account as conveyed to the South African public by the SADF and also as quoted by Steenkamp and Geldenhuys. In reality, a SWAPOl base was located 25 kilometers north of Beacon 25 at Teheki in Angola. Teams of SADF's 1 Recce launched an attack on the base by parachuting. They lost their direction and sought permission to abandon the operation, but told to continue. When they made contact with plan, 6 were killed and 9 were wounded. Operation Calf Days, also known as the Battle of Eheki, remain of the Recce's most bloody battles. So, I mean, there was such a lot of mispropaganda, even by the SANDF, and also by SWAPO and the flippant communists, that, you know, it's just amazing to me that there's still this whole thing about nobody really are telling what exactly happened and what was going on.
Sorry, Martin, did you say something about what happened in 1959, or did I not hear it
Start
correctly?
from 1959. It's the major incidents. This book has got the major incidents from 1959. This is where the guy started. In other words, he's recorded the major incidents that happened in Southwest Africa.
Okay.
When the war
All right.
started. But I must admit, I've checked that book, and not everything is in this book. And there's a lot of difference between what they're saying in the book, what Louis Botma has written in the book, and what a lot of other guys has written. I mean, the book that I've mentioned from that SWAPO card, and I must have it. Let me just look for it. Oh, little flippin' book. Typical, if you look for something, you just can't find it. But it's called Waiting in the Wings. I got a photo here somewhere of it.
I'll find it on Google. Don't worry.
Yeah, you'll find it on Google. The book's name is Waiting in the Wings. The guy's name is Joseph Kobo, Kobo. I couldn't find it in South Africa. I found it in England. I think there was the actual postage has cost me more than the book.
Tell me, Martin, for that ops, when you guys trooped in, where did you troop in from?
We trooped in from Ilundu. We were, I think, between Beacons 27 and 26. We were there in that area for a couple of days before a Big Daddy came out and gave the instructions, and then we moved across. I think we arrived in the bush of that operation on the 27th of the month, because there's still a story that Louis Botma has wrote when we first met in the bush. Yeah, it was the 27th of January 1978 that we went into the operation in that area, and then we regrouped, I think we went across on the 7th, so we probably around the 3rd, 4th, we moved into one direction. We were told to move closer to a certain point. And then we moved on by foot. I mean, those days we were doing everything on foot. I think the only operation that we didn't do on foot was was actually reindeer. As part of was reindeer, we were tasked to go and we had the 5.5s with us. But I mean, obviously, that day when the 5.5 dropped short, it was such a mess. The vehicles couldn't reach us, so we had to stay that night without anything. All our big packs and everything was on the vehicles at the back with the 5.5s. But I mean, that's things that you still.
So Martin, after all of this, what did your ammo look like? Your frontline ammo?
We had about nothing left at Mamuandi. We were dishing out our ammo to the troops to make sure that they at least had one magazine. If SWAPOl actually knew how low we had been on ammo, I think they would have re-attacked us. But I mean, I think they were also out of ammo because it was a hell of a firefight. And I think that's the other thing why the parachutes, the lot of parabats was put on standby that night. Should SWAPOl re-attack, that they could drop them in for assistance. But luckily that didn't happen.
Andrew, if I may say, I apologize for not talking so much tonight, but I was listening to Martin in awe because the period that he was discussing occurred 10 years after I served on the border. I started. What you guys are talking about, I can only read in books. I went to the border the first time in 1967. I was in the Air Force, and they swapped us over to the police because then no soldiers were allowed on the border. So I was a police sergeant every time I went up there. I think, and I may be quite wrong, but from discussion with other people, more or less that time, I was the first Air Force guy to be hit by enemy fire when we didn't call it a contact then, we called it a skirmish. I was hit under the right arm in my armpit with an AK-47.
Sorry to interrupt. When was that?
Wasn't much.
When was
Pardon?
that? When was that?
In 1967, in the Caprivi, we were based. The helicopters, we left them most of the time at Mapacha. At that stage, Mapacha was just a dirt runway and a little broken down shack where we had two choppers there. We parked them there. We had to sort of disassemble two blades on the Alouette 3 and fold them. Otherwise, we couldn't fit them into the building. And I was a flight engineer, and my pilot was old Henny van Wijngaard, rest in peace, Henny. We actually pitched a tent inside the building because the roof was totally shot, and it was just, you just felt better in the tent. Nevertheless, the names that you mentioned only appeared much later. We used the coordinates, longitude and latitude, and to pinpoint things. What was that road that ran from Katimu down to Rwanda? My memory has gone AWOL in any case. I'm 82, so please forgive me.
Andrew, is it possible to share a screen? No. Jy kan julle daai sien met groter maak.
Ja, dis nommer 2.
Dis nommer 2, ja. Ek's nou bang as ek nommer 2 gaan. Okay, daar's nommer 3.
Daar's hy.
Daar's nommer 3. Soos daar's Mamuandi Op jou regterkant in die middel is Shana Golf, dis waar die 5-5 akkoord geval het en bo is die hekkie. So dis die 3 groot goed wat gebeur het, ek dink in daai tyd. Kyk, kan julle daai sien?
Ja.
Die ou met die groen is Vanus Kriel. Dis die ou wat 2 keer geskiet is by Mamuandi. Ek het saam met hom gewerk. Dis hoekom ek sy storie ken. Nadat hy die 2de keer geskiet is, het ek saam met Sarel Kreer gaan werk. Toe het ek eers saam met Oppies gewerk. AL Opperman wat ook geskiet is op die grens. Op die Witpad in September is Oppies geskiet op die grens. Onderste een is Tony Vera wat ek gepraat het, wat so in sy kop gevat het. Hy was 'n Samojoor. En daar is Jack Greef wat by die rekkies was. Dis Kobus Tron, ou wat deur die 5-5 doodgeskiet is. Hy het presies 'n maand na dit het hy in die hospitaal omgekom. Selfe ou links is Cliff Wilkinson, 'n Brian Dash en die ou met die AK-47 bajonet is Johan Lou, snaaks genoeg, ons was ook saam op skool gewees. Daai ou het geen bekendstelling nodig nie. Dis Eddie Viljoen. Of Big Daddy. Ou waarvan wie ek gepraat het, Mike Fonet. Dis die ou wat die masjiengeweer in die loopgrawe gekry het by Mamuandi. So dis basies short. Nou, hierdie is nou 'n hekkie. Ek gaan nou nie daaroor. Ja, I've put it. But I mean, this is something we can also look at, guys. This is what the Rekkies have done for the 40-year anniversary.
We can't see that, Martin. It's very dark. You must put it in the light somewhere.
I think it's going to blink.
No, now we see the light.
Yeah, okay.
No, we can only see it looks like a
It's the Rekkies emblem.
Oh no.
With a coin that they've made.
Oh yeah.
It was magnificent.
Oh, I see. It's a box. All right.
It's a box.
Now I see. It's a box.
It's a box with the Rekkie emblem, the Special Forces emblem.
Yes.
It's of Opskop Drive, the date. And inside, they've got my... Let me see if I can get focus on it. There's it. 32 Battalion VA number, my army number, Corporal Martin King Kong Eheki, 828 1977. On the one side is the Special Forces emblem.
Yeah.
Back is the names of the 7 Rekkies and the 2 of 32 Battalion that got killed.
Yeah. You guys are lucky to have personalized memorabilia like that.
Personalized. This was personalized for us.
Yes. That's very nice. Very nice.
But guys, thanks and have a nice Saturday and a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Same to everybody.
Andrew, I'll send you a copy of that list and I'll also send you a copy of that book.
That would be great. Thanks, Martin.
Because the other thing I haven't told you guys at last is you talk about personalized memorabilia. The biggest one I've got is Eagle Strike. I mean, I was not at Kasinga, so but it was personalized for me by Wim Jan.
Yeah.
It says, Esther Martin, jou eyewaller, jou wegloop RI toe goed uitgewerk vir 'n 3-2 bataljon. Jan Breitenbach.
Nice.
Very nice. Jan is nou seker al heel baie oud.
Jan is al diep in sy 80, maar Jan is skynbaar nog sterk Soos dit vir my lyk dit vir my om Gert is die volgende ou wat kan. Ek meen ons weet nooit nie. Ek meen nie een van ons ding is lewens is ons hande nie soos ons weet nie, maar lyk of oom Gert is is glo fisiek nog redelik aan die gang, maar sy verstand het hom heeltemal gelos. Hy herken blykbaar nie eens meer sy ding is vrou. Hier is die boek waarna ek verwys het, net voor julle dink ek leeg.
Waiting in the wing. Oh ja, okay.
Dis die boek waarna ek verwys. Ek sê om Jan verwys na die boek. In daai Kasinga boek het hy met die ou gepraat, het ek die boek gaan soek. Dis vreeslik interessant dat die ou het saam met die flippin Kubane daar gebly, want hy was 'n logistieke offisier van Nkonto Esizwe wat soort van afgedeel was om SWAPO te help. Ander vraag, wie van julle het vir Vet Doep geken? Ja, hy was ook na my tyd daar, maar ek het hom weer gepak in Afghanistan, soos ek meen, dis hoekom was baie stories oor Vet Doep, wat ek nie kan beaam nie, maar hy was saam in Afghanistan en hy is in Afghanistan dood.
Ja, ek het vir Vet Doep geken.
Wie praat nou?
Marie.
Marie, hoe het jy hom geken?
Ja,
Hy was ook 'n ander karakter, hy hoor, ek het saam met hom saam met hom en Patrick Rolf in Afghanistan, ook Johan Lou, ons was daar saam gewees.
kort stout mannetjie.
Ja, ek het hom gedink pak in Afghanistan, hoor.
Ja. Ja, is maar sad. Ons gaan
Ja,
almal gaan.
dis die lewe my maat, ons is almal op pad soontoe.
Ja.
Dis ook my gesegde is later aan, ek is net 'n myner. Enige dag boogrond is 'n goeie dag.
Ja, seker. Ja. Luister, ou, julle sê mos jy mens lewe net eenmal. Dis ook 'n klomp bloody poel. Ek lewe elke dag. Ek gaan eenmal dood, ja, maar ek lewe elke dag. Ja.
Ja. Andrew, thank you.
Thank-
Is anything else? Give me a shout.
No,
You know
I will do. Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I think, guys, let's call it a day. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
chat again. Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers, everyone.
All the
Thanks,
best.
cheers, guys.
Bye.
Keep well. Cheers, bye.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.